I know there are a few viewers and followers of this YouTube channel that are Lithuanians living abroad, otherwise known as the Lithuanian diaspora. Perhaps it's safe to say that you saw an attractive opportunity outside of Lithuania's borders and chose to pursue it. But you either want to stay connected to your ancestral homeland or are considering an eventual return. As a foreigner who grew up in Canada, I can't say that I relate too much to your situation right now, but I do know someone who can. Meet Gabrielle, or Gabby Kulikovaite, my guest for today's video. Having spent a large portion of her life in Australia, Gabby made a return to her country of birth in 2020, as she explains here.
I left Lithuania it was the year of 2009. I left Lithuania for UK and Australia, and in 2020, in the middle of the pandemic, I returned back to Lithuania. My nan was very sick, and obviously I wanted to come back and, care for her. So I didn't really plan on returning here to live. I was jumping on a flight in Australia. Actually, just before I jumped on a flight, I was told in the airport the news that Australia is actually closing the border, shutting down. And, for those who are wishing to travel, you don't know, how long it will take for you to come back. And I wasn't leaving Australia for good, I was just leaving Australia for some time. So yeah, I made the decision sort of then and there that, oops, okay, looks like I'm getting stuck. And yeah, to this day, I'm still here.
What I found interesting about her story was that her parents left Lithuania before her when she was a teenager, still in school. Even more interesting to me was the fact that this was actually quite common in the decade or two after Lithuania regained independence. Apparently, many working-age Lithuanians found better paying opportunities in other countries and left their children at home so that they could financially support them from a distance. I, as well as many Lithuanians themselves, are interested in what people think of the country. While foreigners who have never been to Lithuania will have their own shocks, surprises, and revelations about Lietuva, I thought it would be so much more interesting to hear from someone who is of Lithuanian ancestry, but has been away for more than a decade, particularly during such a transformative part of the country's modern history. I mean, I've been here for the past 3 years, and I've seen a lot of change. But it must also be like visiting a whole new country if you haven't spent any significant time in Lithuania since 2009. So here are some of Gabby's reflections on coming back to Lithuania.
So a lot has changed because when I left Lithuania back then, because I grew up in a small town, and this small town kind of really was representing to me a lot of things that you would hear about Lithuania, the corruption, political corruption, and lots of organized crime, nepotism, and things like that. So at the time when I left Lithuania, I obviously left Lithuania thinking, well, some of that stuff is still happening, and I was just off for a different kind of life and just explore the foreign, obviously, countries. And so since I've been back, I'm feeling that Lithuania is absolutely just transformed. It changed radically in that, perspective.
Change and adapting to changes can be difficult for most people. Lithuania has transformed a lot in the last decade, but Gabby has too. I can imagine that the Baltic/Central/Eastern European way of life is quite different from what she was used to in Australia. I know a lot of foreigners have had troubles adjusting to life here, so what was the transition like for Gabby? And how did it compare to warm and sunny Australia?
Truth to be told though, I definitely went through a shock period and, adaptation that required a lot of reflecting as to, wait, why are we like this? Because I am Lithuanian, right? As I came back, I was like, oh my God, are we actually always like this? Yeah, we always used to be like this. One of the biggest challenges I'm facing is generally in day-to-day life. I'm kind of sometimes having these issues with people communication when it comes to customer service and just general ways of approaching things. It's just direct communication, isn't it, that I'm not so used to anymore, because living like quarter of Gabrielle is Australian. I'm used to this Australian way of, being open. Like, let's just talk about it. Like being kind of easygoing. We can find a solution. And in here, it's just like simple situations can be, taken to very serious. Like life doesn't have to be this kind of serious. And this is definitely Australia of me, like speaking. So there's been a lot of shock and, understanding that, we haven't changed much in some perspectives and we have grown a lot in other perspectives. And the biggest part, I guess, about that sort of shock bit is the communication and, the tendencies of secrecy, the really guarded carefulness. But I was thinking about this kind of fact as to why I be like this. I lately was just kind of putting the things together and understanding of how much historical trauma there is still around. We actually, at some years, we were, occupied by both, Soviet Union and Nazi Germany. This is quite clear to me, that, this makes sense. I mean, there's been years of struggles and oppression, So this communication style that is really bringing me back to shop. And it is, I think, important to acknowledge and just to look at that part with empathy, that, I suppose I understand why Lithuanians are so reserved and why they are sort of into self-protection and not sharing so much. Because, all these 20th century is the huge mark for us, always being surveillance and all those kind of things was happening. Like people are just scared to actually talk to each other. Understanding this bit and putting it together, the history and, this kind of shock parts as to why I be the way we are. The year after I was born, Lithuania became independent. I was born in Soviet Union. And I think what it is that the next generation, the younger people, I think we are definitely going to change the communication. We might become a bit more open, a bit more sort of chatty, a bit more, into small talk and things like that. And I can see that a lot of people deep down inside, they are warm and they have a lot to offer. You just have to break this barrier through that a lot of layers of things that happen. Coming from this sunny Australia and just, Australia doesn't have the history like Lithuania does. And just like a very sunny country, all is good and the life is a beach. Literally, you just go to the beach and things like that. It's interesting.
Gabby herself is a psychologist and therapist. I actually met her while attending a series of International House of Illness events where Gabby explored emotional wellness for foreigners trying to acclimatize to their new Lithuanian surroundings. With this in mind, this is the advice Gabby offers to foreigners who are new to Lithuania or may be coming to the country in the near future.
Every single person who is visiting to maybe pay attention to some of the history that we had, I guess, because this really explains why we are the way we are. We definitely, as a country, stand for lots of resilience and the strength and things like that. I would just encourage and give a piece of advice to just go be yourselves and just do you, because secretly, even when somebody doesn't really respond or smile, I think they like it. And just knowing some facts of the history, which I think is quite available, really, I think makes it a whole experience even quite raw and authentic. Because, like I said, Lithuania is definitely one of those countries where you can still experience a lot of the legacy, I would say, Soviet era and things like that.
As for the Lithuanian diaspora who might be considering a return to their ancestral homeland, Gabby wanted to encourage those from abroad to spend longer amounts of time in Lithuania. She says that doing this will help you to truly realize just how much the country has to offer. I guess since anything shorter is insufficient.
I would come back to Lithuania for a very brief amount of time, 1 week, 2 weeks, not every year. And I was never able to form my opinion fully. And it took me a little while to, settle in and realize what we are about. Take a longer holiday than 2 weeks and come and experience the local life. Trying to organize a longer holiday, even if you're planning a move or you're not sure yet, and coming back, I think would give you a good picture.
So I'm really grateful that Gabby was willing to be a guest in one of my videos and share her personal story of returning to Lithuania and the difficulties she had in adjusting from a life in Australia. Because while tourism boards, economic investment organizations, and sponsored influencers will be more than happy to highlight the best of Lithuania, I think it's also important to remember that there are also challenges you'll encounter when coming to this country. Of course, it's not just Lithuania, and adjusting to any new country, anywhere in the world, could be difficult. But if you're a little bit more prepared mentally, and know at least a few things to expect, then I think that transition could be a lot smoother. I guess both Gabby and this YouTube channel are here to help with that, just in different ways. Not only has Gabby worked with Lithuania's Ministry of Health and International House of Illness, but she's also a certified therapist and life coach who works one-on-one with individuals. So if you want to learn more about Gabby and what she does, you can find her at the website BeThereNow.space or on the Instagram account Gabby.minds. I'll list all of this and other social media info down in the description. My sincere thanks again to Gabby for her time and openness in sharing her story. And so, in honor of today's guest, who returned to Lithuania from living in Australia, the Lithuanian word of the day is grįžti, which is the verb to return. Grįžti. Well, that's it for today's video. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.